Hello and welcome to this first look exploring session looking at Agamemnon by Seneca, translated out of Latin into English by John Studley in the early 1560s, or it might have been even the late 1550s, actually, off the top of my head. I'm just turning pages in a book to try and remember when these things all happened, and I'm going to do that really awkward way. No, mid-1560s, 1566 this one was printed. We don't have any sense of it as being designed to be a performative version. It seems to be designed primarily as a translation for printing and publication, and that is one of those texts that has enormous influences on Elizabethan theatre in a wider sense, in the professional and the more amateur end of the market as well. We're not going to be stopping and starting too often in this text, as we usually do with first looks. We'll stop a few times, but otherwise we're going to just let the text flow. And today, reading Aegisthus is...
Hi, I'm Eric, and I would be a lot longer and taller if I were being translated from Latin into English, but I'm not.
Reading Thyestes and Electra is...
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Amisu, and I'm an author based in Romford.
Reading Cytemnestra is...
Rachael, actor on the East Coast.
Reading Eurybates and Strophilus is...
It's me, Helen, based in Suffolk.
It's not Strophilus, it's Strophilus. I put an extra I in for no readily apparent reason. Reading
The eyes have it.
Reading Nutrix and Agamemnon is...
Hello, I'm Lynn, and I'm coming to you from the northwestern United States.
And reading the chorus is...
Hello, Helen Good, a historian in Hull.
And we have been having some technical issues with some of our readers today. Stepping in, fingers crossed, to read Cassandra is...
Briony, Sparrow, actor in Lincolnshire. I should have seen this coming.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I will be reading pretty much nothing, because there are pretty much no stage directions. I'll occasionally mention when an act changes. So, without further ado, we're going to dive into the text now with Act 1 and the appearance of the late lamented Thyestes.
Departing from the darkened dens which Thyestes low doth keep, lo here I am sent out again from Tartar dungeon deep. Thyestes I, that with a coast to shun do stand in doubt, the infernal fields I fly, the folk of earth I chase about. My conscience low abhors that I should hither passage make, appalled sore with fear and dread my trembling sinews shake. My father's house, or rather yet my brother's I espy. This is the old and antique porch of Pelops' progeny. Here first the Greeks on princes' heads do place the royal crown, and here enthroned aloft they lie, that jetteth up and down. With stately sceptre in their hand, eke here their courts do lie. This is their place of banqueting, returned therefore will I. Nay, better were it not to haunt the loathsome limbo lakes, whereas the Stygian porter doth advance with lusty crakes, his triple gorge be hung with mane, shag, hairy, rusty black, where Ixion's carcass linked fast the whirling wheel doth rack, and rolleth still upon himself, whereas full oft in vain, much toil is lost, the tottering stone down tumbling back again. Where growing guts the greedy gripe do gnaw with ravening bits, where parched up with burning thirst amid the waves he sits, and gapes to catch the fleeting flood, which with hungry chaps beguiled, that pays his painful punishment, whose feast the gods defiled. Yet that old man so stepped in years, at length by trace of time, how great a part belongs to me and portion of his crime? Account we all the grisly ghosts, whom guilty found of ill, the Canossian judge in Pluto's pits doth toss in torment still. Thyestes I, in dreary deeds, will far surmount the rest, yet to my brother yield I, though I gorged my bloody breast. and stuffed my pampered paunch even with my children 3, that crammed lie within my ribs and have their tomb in me. The bowels of my swallowed babes devoured up I have, nor fickle fortune me alone the father doth deprave. But enterprising greater guilt then that is put in to file my daughter's bawdy bed, my lust she doth allure. To speak these words I do not spare, I wrought the heinous deed, that therefore I through all my stock my parents still proceed. My daughter, driven by force of fate and destinies divine, doth breed young bones and lades her womb with sinful seed of mine. Lo, nature changed upside down and out of order turned, this mingle mangle hath she made, O fat to be forlorn. A father and a grandsire, lo, confusedly I am, my daughter's husband both become, and father to the same. Those babes it should my nephews be when nature rightly runs, she being tumbled doth confound and mingle with my sons. The crystal clearness of the day and Phoebus' beams so bright are mixed with the foggy clouds and darkness dim of night. When wickedness had wearied us, to late truce taken was, even when our detestable deeds were done and brought to pass. But valiant Agamemnon, he grand captain of the host, who bare the sway among the kings and ruled all the roost, whose flaunting flag and banner brave, displayed in royal sort, 1,000 sail of sousing ships did guard the Phrygian port, and with their swelling shackling sails the surging seas did hide, that beateth on the banks of Troy and floweth by her side. When Phoebus' cart the zodiac 10 times had ever run, and waste the battered walls do lie of Troy destroyed and won, returned he is to yield his throat unto his traitorous wife, that shall with force of bloody blade bereave him of his life. The glittering sword, the hewing axe, and wounding weapons mow, with blood for blood new set abroach shall make the slaughter flow. With sturdy stroke and boisterous blow of pithy poleaxe given, his beaten brains are pashed abroad, his cracked skull is riven. Now mischief marcheth on apace, now falsehood doth appear, now butcher's slaughter doth approach, and murder draweth near. In honour of thy native day, Aegisthus, they prepare the solemn feast with junketing and dainty toothsome fare. Fie, what doth shame abash thee so, and cause thy courage quail? Why doubts thy right hand what to do? To smite, why doth it fail? What he forecasting might suspect, why shouldest thou take advice? Why frettest thou, demanding if thou may it enterprise? Nay, if a mother it beseem, thou rather mayest surmise. What now? How happeneth it that thus the smiling summer's night, when Phoebus from the antipodes should render soon the light, on sudden change there turns with nights that last and linger long, when winter's boreas bitter blasts doth puff the trees among? Or what doth cause the gliding stars to stay still in the sky? We wait for Phoebus, to the world bring day now by and by.
O fortune, that dost fail the great estate of kings, on slippery sliding seat thou placest lofty things, and sett'st on tottering sort, where perils do abound, yet never kingdom, calm, nor quiet could be found. No day to sceptres sure doth shine, that they might say, tomorrow shall we rule, as we have done today. One clod of crooked care another bringeth in, one hurly-burly done, another doth begin. Not so the raging sea doth boil upon the sand, whereas the southern wind that blows in Afric land. One wave upon another doth heap with sturdy blast, not so doth Euxine sea his swelling waves upcast. Nor so his belching stream from shallow bottom roll, that borders hard upon the icy frozen pole, where Bootes bright doth twine his wane about, and of the marble seas doth nothing stand in doubt. Oh, how doth fortune toss and tumble in her wheel the staggering states of kings that ready be to reel. Fain would they dreaded be, and yet not settled so, when as they feared are, they fear and live in woe. The silent lady night, so sweet to man and beast, cannot bestow on them her safe and quiet rest. Sleep that doth overcome and break the bonds of grief, it cannot ease their hearts nor minister relief. What castle strongly built, what bulwark, tower, or town, is not by mischief means brought topsy-turvy down? What rampart walls are not made weak by wicked war? From stately courts the kings doth justice fly afar. In princely palaces of honesty the law, and wedlock vow devout is set by little store, and bloodly bellon those doth haunt with gory hand, whose light and vain conceit in painted pomp doth stand. Those Erinnys wood turmoils with frenzies fits, that evermore in proud and haughty houses sits, which fickle fortune's hand in twinkling of an eye from high and proud degree drives down in dust to lie. Although that skirmish cease, no banners be displayed, and though no wiles be wrought, and policy be stayed, down paced with their weight the massy things do shrink, and from her burden doth unstable fortune shrink. The swelling sails puffed up with gale of western wind do yet mistrust thereof a tempest in their mind. The threatening tops that touch the clouds of lofty towers be soonest played, and bet with southern winds, and bet with south wind rainy showers. The darksome wood doth see his tough and sturdy oak, well waned in years, to be clean o'erthrown and broke. The lightning's flashy flame outbreaking in the sky first lighteth in the mounts and hills that are most high. The bodies corpulent and of the largest size are rifest still to catch diseases when they rise. When as the flock to graze in pasture fat is put, whose neck is larded best, his throat shall first be cut. What fortune doth advance and hoisteth up on high, she lets up to fall again most grievously. The things of middle sort and of a mean degree endure above the rest, and longest days do see. The man of mean estate most happy is of all, who pleased with the lot that doth him befall, doth sail on silent shore with calm and quiet tide, and dreads with bruised barge on swelling seas to ride. Nor lancing to the deep where bottom none is found, may with his rudder search and reach the shallow ground.
So we've had Act 1 there, an introductory, cheerful, happy speech from Thyestes, and a chorus setting the scene generally, getting us into the general the sense of where we are. A lot of stuff about seas. We like seas, obviously. That's an important thing. But let's dive into some plot before we go into any discussion on what the text is doing, as we have a scene now with people actually talking to each other. Act 2, Clytemnestra and the Nutrix nurse.
O drowsy, dreaming, dotting soul, what cometh in thy brain, to seek about for thy defence what way thou mayst attain? What ails thy skittish wayward wits to waver up and down? The fittest shift prevented is, the best path overgrown thou mightest once maintained have thy wedlock chamber chaste, and eke have ruled with majesty, by faith conjoined fast. Now nurtures love, now nurtures lore neglected is. All right doth clean decay, religion and dignity with faith are worn away. and ruddy shame with blushing cheeks so far God wot is past, that when it would, it cannot now come home again at last. Oh, let me now at random run with bridle at my will. The safest path to mischief is by mischief open still, now put in practice. Seek about, search out and learn to find, though wily trains, and crafty guiles of wicked womankind, what any devilish traitorous dame durst do in working woe, or any wounded in her wits by shot of Cupid's bow. Whatever rigorous step dame could commit with desperate hand, or as the wench who, flaming fast by Venus poisoning brand, was driven by lewd incestuous love and ship of Thessail land, to flit away from Colchis Isle, where Phasis channel deep, with silver stream down from the hills of Armeni doth sweep. Get weapons good, get bilbo blades or temper poison strong, or with some yonker trudge from Greece by theft the seas along. Why dost thou faint to talk of theft, exile, or privy flight? These came by half. Thou therefore must on greater mischief light.
O worthy queen among the Greeks that bears the swinging sway, and born of Leda's royal blood, what muttering dost thou say? What fury fell enforceth thee, bereaved of thy wits, to rage and rave with bedlam brains, to fret with frantic fits? Though, madam, thou do counsel keep, and not complain thy case, thine anguish plain appeareth in thy pale and wanny face. Reveal, therefore, what is thy grief? Take leisure good, and stay. What reason could not remedy, oft cured hath delay?
So grievous is my careful case, which plungeth me so sore, that deal I cannot with delay, nor linger any more. The flashing flames and furious force of fiery fervent heat, outraging in my boiling breast, my burning bones doth beat. It sucks the sappy marrow out of the juice it doth convey. It frets, it tears, it rents, it gnaws my guts and gall away. Now feeble fear still eggs me on, with dolor being pressed, and cankered hate with thwarting thumps doth bounce upon my breast. The blinded boy that lovers' hearts doth grieve with deadly stroke. Entangled hath my linked mind with lewd and wanton yoke, refusing still to take a foil, or clean to be confound. Among these broils and agonies my mind besieging round, though feeble, weary, battered down, in undertrodden shame, that wrestleth, striveth, struggleth hard, and fighteth with the same. Thus am I driven to diverse shores, and beat from bank to bank, and tossed in the foamy floods that strives with courage crank. As one here wind, and there the stream, when both their force will try. From sands alow doth hoist and rear the seas with surges high. The weltering wave doth staggering stand, not witting what to do, but hovering doubts, whose furious force he best may yield him to. My kingdom therefore I cast off, my scepter I forsake as anger, sorrow, hope, me lead, that way I mean to take. At all adventure to the seas I yield my beaten barge, at random careless will I run, now will I rove at large, whereas my mind at fancy fond doth gad and run astray. It is the best to choose that chance, and follow on that way.
This desperate dotage doth declare, and rashness rude and blind, to choose out chance to be the guide and ruler of thy mind.
He that is driven to utter pinch and furthest shift of all, what need he doubt his doubtful lot, or how his luck befall?
In silent shore thou sailest yet, thy trespass we may hide. If thou thyself detect it not, nor cause it be descried.
Alas, It is more blazed abroad, and further it is blown, than any crime that ever in this princely court was sown.
Thy former fate with pensive heart and sorrow thou dost rue, and fondly yet thou goest about to set a brooch anew.
It is a very foolishness to keep a mean therein.
The thing he fears he doth augment, who heapeth sin to sin.
But fire and sword to cure the same the place of salve supply.
There is no man who at the first extremity will try.
In working mischief, men do take the readiest way they find.
The sacred name of wedlock once revoke and have in mind.
10 years have I been desolate, and led a widow's life. Yet shall I entertain a new my husband as his wife.
Consider yet thy son and heir, whom he of thee begot.
And eke my daughter's wedding blaze, as yet forget I not. Achilles, eke my son-in-law to mind I do not spare. How well he kept his vow that he to me his mother sware.
When as our navy might not pass by wind nor yet by stream, thy daughter's blood in sacrifice their passage did redeem. She stirred and brake the sluggish seas, whose water still did stand, whose feeble force might not hoist up the vessel from the land.
I am ashamed herewithal. It maketh me repine that Tyndarus, who from the gods doth fetch her noble line, should give the ghost to sage the wrath of gods and them appease, whereby the Greekish navy might have passage free by seas. My grudging mind still harps upon my daughter's wedding day, whom he hath made for Pelops' stock the bloody ransom pay. When as with cruel countenance, imbrued with gory blood, as at a wedding altar side the unpitied parent stood, it irked Calchas' woeful heart, who did abhor the same. His oracle he rued, and ache the back reflecting flame, O wicked and ungracious stock that winnest ill with ill, triumphing in thy filthy feats, increasing lewdness still. By blood we win the wavering winds, by death we purchase war.
But by this means 1,000 ships at once released are.
With lucky fate attempt the seas did not the lucid rout. For Owless Isle, in gracious fleet from port did tumble out. As with a lewd unlucky hand the war he did begin, so fortune favored his success to thrive no more therein. Her love as captive holdeth him whom captive he did take, not moved with the earnest suit that could Achilles make. Of Phoebus' prelate Symphical he did retain the spoil, when for the sacred virgin's love his furious breast doth boil. Achilles' rough and thundering threats could not him qualify, nor he that doth direct the fates above the starry sky. To us he is an augur just, and keeps his promise due, but well he threats his captive trolls of word he is not true. The savage people fierce in wrath once might not move his sprite, who did purloin the kindled tents with fire blazing bright. When slaughter great on Greeks was made in most extremest fight, without a foe he conquered, with leanest pines away. In lewd and wanton chamber tricks he spends the idle day, and freshly still he feeds his lust, least that some other while his chamber chaste should want a stews, that might the same defile. On Lady Briseis' love again his fancy fond doth stand, whom he hath got, that wrested was out of Achilles' hand. In carnal copulation to have he doth not shame, though from her husband's bosom he hath snatched the wicked dame. He that doth at Paris grudge, with wound but newly stroke, inflamed with Phrygian prophet's love, his boiling breast doth smoke. Now after Trojan booties brave, and Troy o'erwhelmed, he saw returned, he is a prisoner's spouse, and Priam's son-in-law. Now heart be bold, take courage good, of stomach now be stout. A field that easily is not fought, to pitch thou goest about, and practice mischief thou must put. Why hopest thou for a day, while Priam's daughter come from Troy and Greece do bear the sway? But as for thee, poor silly wretch, awaiteth at thy place thy widow, virgins, and Orest, his father-like in face. Consider their calamities to come, and eke their cares, whom all the perils of the broil doth threaten thy affairs. O cursed captive, woeful wretch, why dost thou loiter so? Thy little brats a step-dame have, whose wrath will work their woe. With gashing sword, and if thou can none other way provide, nor thrust it through another's ribs, then launch thy gory side, so murder twain with brood blood, and let blood immirrored be, and by destroying of thyself destroy thy spouse with thee. Death is not soused with sops of sorrow if some man else I have, whose breathless corpse I wish to pass with me to deadly grave.
Queen, bridle thy affections, and wisely rule thy rage. Thy swelling mood now mitigate, thy choler ache assuage. Weigh well the weighty enterprise that thou dost take in hand. Triumphant victor he returns of mighty Asia land, avenging Europe's injury with him he brings away the spoils of sacked Pargamy, a huge and mighty prey. In bondage he leads the folk of long assaulted Troy, yet darest thou by policy attempt to him annoy, whom with the dint of glittering sword Achilles durst not arm, although his rash and desperate dicks the forward knight did arm. Nor Ajax yet, more hardy man, unyielding vital breath, whom frantic fury fell in force to wound himself to death. Nor Hector, he whose only life procured the Greeks delay, and long in war for victory enforced them to stay. Nor Paris' shaft, whose conning hand with shot did so sure did aim. Nor mighty Memnon, swart and black, had power to hurt the same. Nor Xanthus' flood, where to and fro dead carcasses did swim, with armor hewed and therewith all some maimed broken limb. Nor Simois, that purple walms with slaughter died doth stir. Nor Cygnus, lily white, the son of fenny gods so dear. Nor yet the mustering Thracian host, nor warlike Rhesus king, nor Amazons, who to the wars did painted quivers bring, and bear their hatches in their hands with target and with shield, yet had no power with ghastly wounds to foil him in the field. Sith he such scourings hath escaped and plunged of perils past, intendest thou to murder him, returning home at last, and sacred altars to profane with slaughter so unpure? Shall Greece, the avenger, let this wrong long unrevenged endure? The grim and fierce courageous horse, the battles, shouts, and cries, the swelling seas with bruised barks do dread when storms arise. Behold the fields with streams of blood o'erflown and deeply drowned, and all the chivalry of Troy in servile bondage bound, which Greeks have writ in registers. Thy stubborn stomach bind, subdue thy fond affections, and pacify thy mind.
And what happens to the nurse, we're not sure, but Act 2, Scene 2 is Aegisthus and Clytemnestra.
Cursed time that evermore my mind did most detest, the days that I abhorred have and hated in my breast are come that mine estate will bring to utter rack. Alas, my heart, why dost thou fail and fainting fliest back? What dost thou mean at first assault from armor thus to fly? Trust this, the cruel gods intend my doleful destiny to wrap thee in perils, with perils around, to wrap thee in with perils round and catch thee in a band. Endeavor drudge with all thy power their plagues for to withstand, with stomach stout rebellious to fire and sword appeal.
It is no plague, if such a death thy native destinies deal.
O partners of my perils, all begot of leader thou, direct my doings, thy doings after mine, and unto thee I vow, this drossel sluggish ringleader, this stout strong-hearted sire, shall pay thee so much blood again, as shed he hath in fire. How haps it is that his trembling cheeks be so pale and white, lying aghast as in a trance, with fainting face upright.
His conscience wedlock vow doth prick and brings him home again. Let us return the self same trade anew for to retain, to which at first we should have stuck and ought not to forsake. To covenant continent anew let us ourselves betake, and take the trade of honesty at no time is too late. He purged is from punishment whose heart the crime doth hate.
Whither wilt thou gad, O rash and unadvised dame? What wilt thou earnestly believe and firmly trust the same, that Agamemnon's spousal bed will loyal be to thee? That not doth underprop thy mind, which might thy terror be. His proud success puffed up too high with lucky blast of wind might make so crank, and set aloft his haughty swelling mind. Among his peers he stately was, ere Trojan turrets torn. How think ye then, his stomach stout, by nature given to scorn, in haughtiness augmented, is more in himself to joy, through this triumphant victory and conquest got of Troy. Before his voyage, Mycenae king most mildly he did reign, but now a tyrant truculent, returned he is again. Good luck and proud prosperity do make his heart so rise, with what great preparation prepared solemn wise, a rabblement of strumpets come that clung about him all. But yet the prophetess of Thebe, whom God of truth we call, appears above the rest. She keeps the king, she doth him guide. Wilt thou in wedlock have a mate and not for it provide? So would not she, the greatest grief this is unto a wife, her husband's minion in her house to lead an open life. A queen's estate cannot abide her peer with her to reign, and jealous wedlock will not her companion sustain.
Aegisthus, in desperate mood again, why set'st thou me afloat? Why kindlest thou the spark of ire in embers covered hot, if that the victor's own free will release his captive's care? Why may not I, his lady spouse, have hope as well to fare? One law doth rule in royal throne, and pompous princely towers among the vulgar sort, another in private simple bowers. What though my grudging fancy force that at my husband's hand sharp execution of the law I stubbornly withstand? Recording this that heinously offended him I have, he gently will me pardon grant who need the same to crave.
Even so, on this condition thou mayest with him compound, to pardon him if he again to pardon thee be bound. The subtle science of the law, the statutes of our land, that long ago decreed were, thou dost not understand. The judges be malicious men. They spite and envy us, but he shall have them partial his causes to discuss. This is the chiefest privilege that doth to kings belong. What laws forbiddeth other men, they do, and do no wrong.
He pardoned Helen. She is wed to Menelaus again, which Europe all with Asia did plunge alike in pain.
No lady's lust hath ravished yet Atrides in his life, nor privily purloined his heart, betrothed to his wife. To pick a quarrel he begins, and matter thee to blame. Suppose thou nothing hast commit that worthy is of shame? What booteth him whom princes hate an honest life to frame? He never doth complain his wrong, but ever bears the blame. Wilt thou repair to Spart, and to thy country trudge aright? Wilt thou become a runagate from such a worthy wight? Divorcement made from kings will not so let the matter escape. Thou easest fear by fickle hope, that falsely thou dost shape.
My trespass is disclosed to none, but to a trusty wight.
Princes gates fidelity, yet never enter might.
I will corrupt and feed him so with silver and with gold, that I by bribing bind him shall no secrets to unfold.
The trust that hired is and bought by bribes and money's fee, thy counsel to bewray again with bribes enticed will be.
The remnant left of shamefastness of those ungracious tricks, wherein of late I did delight, my conscience freely pricks. Why keep'st thou such a busy stir, and with thy flattering speech, instructing me with lewd advice, dost wicked counsel preach? Shall I, forsooth of royal blood, with all the speed I can, refuse the king of kings, and wed an outcast, banished man?
Why should you think in that Thyestes was father unto me, and Agamemnon Atreus' son should my better be?
If that be but a trifle small, and nephew to the same.
I am of Phoebus' lineage born, whereof I do not shame.
Why makest thou Phoebus author of thy wicked pedigree? Whom out of heaven ye forced to fly when bridle back he drew? When Lady Night with mantle black did spread her sudden shade? Why makest thou the gods in such reproachfulness to wade? Whose father hath thee cunning made by sleight and subtle guile, to make thy kinsman cuckold, while his wife thou do defile? What man is he whom we do know to be thy father's mate, abusing lust of lechery in such unlawful rate? Levant, go pack thee hence in haste. Dispatch out of my sight this infamy, whose blemish stains this blood of worthy white.
This is no new exile to me, that wickedness do haunt, but if that thou, O worthy queen, command me to avaunt, I will not only straight avoid the house, the town and field, my life on sword at thy request I ready am to yield.
This heinous deed permit shall I, most churlish, cruel, drab, against my will though I offend, the fault I should not blab. Nay, rather come apart with me, and let us join our wits to wrap ourselves out of this woe in parlous threatening fits.
Now chant it, lusty lads, Apollo's praise suborn. To thee the frolic flock their crowned heads adorn. To thee King Inach's stock of wedlock chamber void, braid out their virgin locks, and thereon have employed their savoury garlands green. It will of I wis of laurel bough, draw near with us, O Thebes, our dancing fellow thou. Come also ye that drink of Ismen bubbling flood, whereas the laurel tree full thick on banks doth bide, eke ye whom Mando mild and prophetess divine, foreseeing fate and born of high Tiresias line, hath stirred to celebrate with sacred use and rite, Apollo and Dian born of Latona bright. O victor Phoebe, unbend thy knocked bow again, sith quietness and peace anew we do retain, and let thy twankling harp make melody so shrill, while that thy nimble hands strike quavers with thy quill. No curious descant I, nor lusty music crave, no jolly rumbling note, nor trolling tune to have, but on thy treble lute, according to thy use, strike up a plain song note, as when thy learned muse thy lessons do record. though yet on baser string, it liketh thee to play the song that thou didst sing. As when from fiery heaven the dint of lightning flew, sent down by wrath of gods, the Titans overthrew. Or else when mountains were on mountains heaped high, that raised for giants fell their steps into the sky, and mountain Ossa stood on top of Pelion laid, Olympus, whereon the pines their budding branches braid, down paced both. Draw near, O Juno, noble dame, both spouse of mighty Jove and sister to the same, thou that dost rule with him, made jointer of his mace. Thy people, we of Greece, give honor to thy grace. Thou only dost protect from perils Argos land, that ever careful was to have thine honor stand. Most suppliant thereunto, thou also with thy might dost order joyful peace and battles fierce of fight. Accept, O conquering queen, these branches of the bays, that Agamemnon here doth yield unto thy praise, and hollow box and pipe that doth with holes abound, in singing unto thee doth give a solemn sound. To thee the damsels eke that play upon the strings, with conning harmony melodious music sings. The matrons eke of Greece, by riper years more grave, to thee the taper play, that vowed oft they have. The heifered young and white companions of the bull, unskillful yet by proof the painful plough to pull, whose neck was never worn nor galled with print of yoke, is in thy temple slain, receiving deadly stroke. O Lady Pallas, thou of most renowned hap, bred of the brains of Jove that smites with thunderclap, thou lofty Trojan towers of craggy knotty flint, hast bet with battering blade and stroke with javelin dint. The elder matrons with the dames that younger be, together in mingled heaps do honor due to thee. When thou approaching nigh, thy coming is espied, the priest unbars the gate and opes the temple wide. By clustering throngs the flocks thine altars haunt apace, bedecked with twisted crowns, so trim with comely grace, the old and ancient men, well stepped and grown in years, whose feeble trembling age procureth hoary hairs, obtaining their request craved of thy grace divine, do offer up to thee their sacrificed wine. O bride to Diane, whose blaze sheds light three sundry ways, we mindful are of thee and render thankful praise, till on thy native soil thou didst firmly bind, that to and fro was wont to wander with the wind, which with foundation sure main ground forbids to pass for navies, after which to swim it wonted was. It is become a road defying force of wind, the mother's funerals of Tantalus his kind. The daughters, 7, by death, thou victress doth account, whose mother Niobe abides on Sipple Mount, a lamentable rock, and yet unto this hour her tears new gushing out the marble old doth power. The Godhead of the twins in sumptuous solemn wise, both man and wife adore with savory sacrifice. But thee above the rest, O Father great and guide, whose mighty force is by the burning lightning tried. Oh, when thou gavest a beck and didst thy head but shake, at once the extremest poles of heaven and earth did quake. O Jupiter, the root that of our lineage art, accept these offered gifts and take them in good part. And thou, O grandsire, great to thy posterity, have some remorse that do not swerve in chivalry. But yonder low with striving steps, the soldier comes amain in all post haste, with token that good news declareth plain. A laurel branch that hangeth on his spearhead he doth bring. Eurybates is come, who hath been trusty to the king.
But before we hear from that soldier chap, we will pause. That's the end of Act 2. So Act 1, Thyestes does some backstory stuff, just setting the scene. Chorus talks about fortune and fate and stuff. And then Act 2, we're into Clytemnestra. What do I do? My husband's coming home. I've got some beef with Agamemnon. It would be fair to say, and then her lover comes in, and they sort of debate what do you do next? What do you do? Are you in full murder? Do you go full murdery? That's the question, and that sort of flies back and forth, and Aegisthus and. Yeah, I'm interested by Aegisthus' position, and also how Clytemnestra sort of turns on him and goes, "Yeah, but who are you really? I mean, you're okay as a, something to do, but the idea of marrying you, who are you really?" And he goes, "Well, I'll go if you want. I've been banished before. It's no, it's all right, it's cool." Chorus does some other stuff. Thoughts from the room. We've got, it's all 14ers, pretty much, I think. Whereas with the Hayward text we did the other week, really played around with different verse forms all the way through. So some was 14ers, some was doing all sorts of other things. So we are sort of in danger of getting trapped in that rhythm because it just wants to do that. And people were playing around with it a bit and trying to see what happened. How is it running for people? Thoughts on the room? Brief thoughts on the room before we dive into Act 3. Who wants to leap in? Eric. Brave soul.
Yeah, it's interesting how it's like the rhyme kind of, you try to resist it, but also sometimes it doesn't end, like the sentence doesn't end at the end of a rhyme couplet or something. So you kind of can't, I don't know, it just, to make meaning out of it, you have to read it quite a few times rather than, obviously this is a cold read, so it doesn't really make sense for us, I guess, sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't help that we're not able to, act a bit, where, Clytemnestra and Aegisthus and the nurse are all effectively having an argument. And there are big emotions technically at play, and we're not necessarily reaching for those yet at this stage because, again, we're constantly just doing the form of the thing, and how much of the form of the thing is getting in the way and how much of it is it adding. I think with the choruses it works very well because there's something nice. I think and I think Rachael was doing some really nice things with getting Clytemnestra to play in slightly different. 14ers can be more elastic than you'd think. Lynn, then Helen.
Yeah, I don't see a lot of enjambment, even though a sentence might not end with a line, a phrase does. So I find that the rhyme actually quite hard to resist. And another thing that makes it difficult to cold read is the syntax is really quite elaborate in a lot of places, which I'm guessing is kind of more of a Roman influence on the translator than Greek. That like long bit I had about all of these different people were unable to defeat Agamemnon. It's not the Trojans, not Hector, not Paris, and it's all one sentence. So the elaborate syntax, the sort of clauses within clauses, it's not quite Gorbaduc, but it's still sometimes really hard to parse the syntax.
Helen.
Yeah, that last chorus speech, there was a tremendous amount going on. For a start, the chorus was directing a whole load of other people who were laying tributes at what I assume were statues or representations of the entire Greek or Roman pantheon around the edge of the stage. And it was moving from one to the other. And I really felt that it would have done a lot better if I had been able to point to, while rehearsing the attributes of each god, I was able to actually point to them.
Because it's punctuated with all these, oh, Lady Pallas, oh, Bright
Yeah.
Diane, etc.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but I keep on hearing enormous resonances from other plays, other much, much later plays, early modern and later, who've really picked up on some of this. I mean, I was unfortunate enough to have an awful lot of Racine thrust upon me at school. And I'm getting a strong Athalie vibe from this one.
Yes, I mean this is where all that neoclassical stuff comes from. It's from Seneca, and you're right. It's this is one of those instances where the sort of received wisdom. These texts are really important. They really are. They really they do a number on the Elizabethans and beyond. When they turn up in print and everyone can read them, and regardless of whether they end up on stage, they end up in stage in sort of diluted form by other people doing other things with elements of this. Rachael.
Yeah, that was what I was trying to figure out, like it, because this text versus the Haywood one that we recently read, the 14ers, like if this has come before when 14ers are popular, or if it came later and it's trying to keep the 14ers there as sort of like like a sort of like this is a ye old tale or something that it's bringing back or something like that, and how maybe this text is more for reading as opposed to performance, where Haywood as geared his towards performance.
You'll have to be specific. Which Haywood are you talking about? Are you talking about Thomas, the playwright later on for a Playhouse drama? Or are you talking about Jasper, who translated the last Senecan tragedy we did?
Now I'm confused between the two Haywoods, so
She's talking about Thomas and the Iron Age Part 2.
Yes, I was going to say, which are fundamentally, it's a very important distinction to know, because otherwise we could be very confused about what you're talking about. In the 1560s, we're right in the middle of 14er land, or shall we say, lots of different verse form land. People are playing around with what verse forms they're gonna dance around, this is part of the process of deciding. And I think you're right. It's a more literary project, this, and that's fine. It doesn't have to be designed for the stage if that's what it's trying to do. We need to move on, so hold on to any thoughts that you may have had as we're going to dive into Act 3. And soldiers come on, Clytemnestra's still on, Eurybates and Clytemnestra have a chat.
So tired after many years with travail and with toil, scant crediting myself, the gods of this my native soil, the temple and the altars of the saints that rule the sky, in humble sort with reverence devoutly worship I. Now pay your vows unto the gods, return it is again, unto his country court where he was to rule and reign. Prince Agamemnon, victor he, of Greece the great renown.
the tidings of a message good unto mine ears is blown, where stays my spouse, who, longing for 10 years, I have outscanned. What doth he yet sail on the seas, or he is come aland? Yet hath he fixed and set his foot back, stepping home again, upon the sandy shore that long he wished to attain. And doth he still enjoy his health, enhanced in glory great, and painted out in pomp of praise, whose fame the sky doth beat?
Lest we with burning sacrifice at length this lucky day.
And eke the gods, though gracious, yet dealing long delay, Declare if that my brother's wife enjoy the vital air, and tell me to what kind of coast my sister doth repair.
God grant and give us better news than this that thou dost crave. The heavy hap of fighting floods forbids the truth to have. Our scattered fleet, the swelling seas, attempts in such a plight, that ship from ship was taken clean out of each other's sight. Atrides in the waters wide, turmoiled and straying far, more violence by sea sustained than by the bloody war, and as it were a conquered man escaping home all wet, now bringeth in his company of such a mighty fleet, a sort of bruised broken barks, beshaken, torn and rent.
Show what unlucky chance it is that hath our navy spent. What storm of seas dispersed hath our captains here and there?
Thou willest me to make report of heavy woeful gear. Thou biddest me most grievous news with tidings good to part. The uttering of this woeful hap my feeble mind doth start, and horribly appalled it is with this so monstrous ill.
Speak out and utter it. Himself with terror he doth fill, whose heart his own calamity and cark doth loathe to know. The heart whom doubted damage dulls with greater grief doth glow.
When Trojan buildings blazing bright did burn away and broil, enkindled first by Greekish brand they fall to part the spoil. Repairing fast unto the seas again we come aboard, and now the soldier's weary loins were eased of his sword. Their bucklers cast aside, upon the hatches lie above, their warlike hands in practice put, and oars learn to move. Each little hindrance seems too much to them in hasty plight, when of recourse the admiral gave watchword by his light, and trumpet blasts began to call our army from delay. The painted pup with gilded snout did first guide on the way, and cut the course which following on 1,000 ships did rive. Then first to wind with pippling puffs our launching ships did drive, which glided down upon our sails, the water being calm, with breath of western wind so mild, scant moved any warm. Shining seas bespread about with ships doth glister bright, and also cover it with the same lay, hid from Phoebus' light. It doth us good to gaze upon the naked shore of Troy, the desert Phrygian plots so bare to view we hop for joy. The youth, each one bestirs themselves, and striking all together, they tuff their oars, and with their toil they help the wind and weather. They tug and cheerily row by course, the spurting seas updash, against the rattling ribs of ships, the flapping floods do flash. The hoary froth of wrestling waves, which oars aloft do raise, do draw and trace a furrow through the marble-faced seas. With stronger blast, with belly swollen, our hoisted sails did fill. They row no more, but let the pup to go with wind at will. Their shearing oars lay aside, our pilot doth espy how far from any land aloof our sails recoiling fly. The bloody battles doth display the threats of Hector stout, or of his rattling wagons tells wherein he rode about, or how his gashed Carthage slain and trained about the field, did funeral flames and obit rites for coin again was yield. Now Jupiter embathed was in all his royal blood, the frolic fish disposed was to mirth in Tyrrhene flood, and fetching frisks both in and out, plays on the water's brim, and on his broad and finny back about the seas doth swim, with gambols quick in rings around and side to side inclined, and while he sport to front the pup, and whips again behind. Now fiddling on the snout before the dallying wanton route, with jocundary jolly tricks doth skip the fleet about. Sometimes he standeth gazing on, and eyes the vessels bright. Now every shore is covered clean, and land is out of sight. The parlous point of Ida Rock in sight doth open lie, and that alone espy we could with firmly fixed eye. A dusky cloud of stifling smoke from Troy did smoulder black, when Titan from the weary necks the heavy yokes did slack. The fading light did grovelling bend, and down the day did shroud against the stars a mounting up a little misty cloud, came out belching out in irksome lump, and Phoebus' gallant beams he spewed on, bestaining them up down in the western streams. The sun set swerving in such sort with divers change of face, did give us cause to have mistrust of Neptune's doubted grace. The evening first did burnish bright, and paint with stars the sky. The winds were laid, and clean for soul our sails that quiet lie. When cracking, rattling, rumbling noise rushed down with thundering sway, from tops of hills with greater stir doth threaten and bewray. With bellowings and yellings loud, the shores do grunt and groan, the craggy cliffs and roaring rocks do howl in hollow stone. The bubbling waters swell upreared before the wrestling wind, when suddenly the lowering light of moon is hid and blind. The glimpsing stars do go to glade, the surging seas are tossed, even to the skies among the clouds the light of heaven is lost. More nights in one compacted hour with shadow dim and black, one shadow upon another doth more darkness heap and pack. And every spark of light consumed the waves and skies do meet, the ruffling winds rage on the seas, through every coast they flit. They heave it up with violence, or turn from bottom low, the western wind flat in the face, eastern wind doth blow. With hurly-burly Boreas set ope his blasting mouth, and girdeth out his boisterous breath against the stormy south. Each wind with all his might doth blow, and worketh dangers deep. They shake the floods, a sturdy blast along the seas to sweep, that rolls and rumbles wave on wave, a northern tempest strong. Abundance great of flaky snow doth hurl our ships among. The south wind out of Libya doth range upon a shoal, and with the puissant force thereof the quicksands up be rolled. Nor bideth in the south, which doth with tempest lump and lour, and force the flowing floods to rise by pouring out a shower. The stubborn Erebus earthquakes made, and shook the countries east, and Aos cost where Phoebus first ariseth from his rest. How violent Chorus stretched and tear his yawning breast full wide, a man would sure have thought the world did from his centre slide, and that the frames of heaven broke up, the gods a downward fall. And chaos, dark confused heap, would shade and cover all. The stream strove with the wind did beat it down again. The springing sea within its banks cannot itself contain. The raging shower his trilling drops doth mingle with the seas, and yet in all this misery he find not so much ease, to see and know what ill it is that worketh their decay. The darkness dim oppresseth still, and keep the light away. Black-faced night with hellish hue was clad of Stygian lake, and yet full oft with glimpsing beams the sparkling fire outbreak. The cloud doth crack, and being rent, the lightning leapeth out. The wretches like the same so well, it shining them about, that still they wish such sight to have, that God wot but ill. The navy swinging down itself doth cast away and spill. One side with the other side is cracked, and helm is rent with helm. The ship itself the gulping seas do headlong overwhelm. Erewhile a greedy gaping gulf doth sup it up amain, then by and by, tossed up aloft, it spews it out again. She with her swaggering full of sea, to bottom low doth sink, and drencheth deep aside in floods of tottering broken brink. That underneath a dozen waves lay drowned out of sight, Her broken planks swim up and down, spoiled is her tackle quite. Both sail and oars clean are lost, the mainmast eke is gone, that wanted was to bear upright the sail yard thereupon. The timber and the broken boards lie on the water's brim, when cold and shivering fear in us does strike through every limb. The wisest wits intoxicate, dare nothing enterprise, and cunning practice naught avails when fearful storms arise. The mariners, letting duty slip, stand staring all aghast, their scoping oars suddenly out of their hand are rust. To prayer then apace we fall, when other hope is none. The Greeks and Trojans, the gods alike, do make their moan. What succour of the fates may we poor wretches find? Against his father Pyrrhus, there's a spiteful, cankered mind. Ajax grudge Ulysses doth, King Laius doth hate, great Hector. Agamemnon is with Priam at debate. O happy man is he that doth lie slain in Trojan ground, and hath deserved by handy stroke to take his fatal wound, whom fame preserveth, taking up his tomb in conquered land. Bones, whose melting coward's heart does never take in hand, or enterprise no noble act, those force of floods shall drown. But fate, forbearing long, will take stout roots of high renown. Full well may our shame it be, in such a sort to die, if any man his spiteful mind yet cannot satisfy. With these outrageous plunging plagues that down from gods are set, appease at length thy wrathful God again, and take relent. Even Troy for pity would have wept to see our woeful case, but if that in thy boiling breast black rancour still have place, and that the Greeks to ruin run, it be thy purpose bent, why do these Trojans go to wrath? For whom thus are we spent? Assuage the rigour of the sea that threatening hills uprears, this drenched fleet the Trojan folk and Greek together bears. Then from their prayers are they put, their faltering tongues to stay. The roaring seas doth drown their voice and carries their cries away. Then mighty Pallas, armoured with the leaping lightning fire, that testy Jove doth use to hurl provoked to swelling ire, with threatening javelin in her hand, a prowess means to try, and eke her force whose boiling breast with Gorgon fits doth fry. Or with what with target she can do, and with her father's fire, then from the skies another storm begins abroad to spire. But Ajax nothing yet dismayed, or force withstandeth stout, whom when he set his swelling sails with cables stretched out, she lighting down did ring him hard, and wrapped him in her flame, and slang another flashing dint of lightning on the same. With all her force and violence, her hand brought back again, she tossed him out, as late that feat her father taught her plain. Both o'er Ajax and his pup she flieth over thwart, and renting man and ship, of both she bears away apart. His courage naught abated, yet he all to singe doth seem, even like a stubborn ragged rock amid the striving stream. He trains along the roaring seas, and eke the waltering wave, by shoving on his burly breast in sunder quite he drave. The bark with hand he caught, and on itself did tip it o'er, and yet Ajax shining in the flood, which darkness blind doth cover. At length attaining to a rock, his thundering crakes were these: I conquered have the force of fire and rage of fighting seas. It doth me good to master thus the anger of the sky, with Pallas' wrath, the lightning flames and floods tumulting high. The terror of the warlike god once could not make me fly, the force of Mars and Hector both at once sustained have I. Nor Phoebus' darts could me constrain, from him 1 foot to shun. All these besides the Phrygians subdued we have and won. When other meacox flings his darts, shall I not then withstand? Yea, what if Phoebus came himself to pitch them with his hand? When, in his melancholy mood, he boasted without mean, then Father Neptune lift his heat above the waters clean. The beaten rock with forked mace he undermining plucked, from bottom loose and sunk it down, when down himself he ducked. There Ajax lay, by land, by fire and storm of seas destroyed, but we by suffering shipwreck are with greater plagues annoyed. A subtle shallow flood there is flown out on a stony shoal, where crafty Caphar out of sight the lurking rocks doth hold, upon whose sharp and ragged tops the swelling tide doth flow. The boiling waves do beat thereon, still swaying to and fro. Turret nodding over it doth hanging with falling sway, from whence on either side from height prospect espy we may. Two seas, and on this hand the coast where Pelops once did reign, and Isthmus flood in narrow creek, recoiling back again, doth stop Ionian sea, lest into Hellespont it runs. On t'other part is Lemnon flood, that fame by bloodshed won. On t'other side, Chalcedon, to stand against this fort, Aulis Isle that stayed out ships that thither did resort. This castle here inhabit doth our Palmedes sire, whose cursed hand held in the top a brand of flaming fire, that did allure our fleet to turn on lurking rocks aright, enticing them with wily blaze to come unto the light. All into fitters shaken are the vessels on the shoal, that some do swim, and some upon the rocks are rolled, and others slipping back again, so to eschew the rocks, his bruised ribs and rattling sides against each other's knocks, whereby the other he doth break, and broken is himself. Then would they lance into the deep, for now they dread the shelf. This peck of troubles chance to hap in dawning of the day, but when the gods besought of us, began the rage to stay, and Phoebus' golden beams began afresh to render light, the doleful day descried all the damage done by night.
Oh, whether may I now lament and weep with wailing sad? Or shall I else in that my spouse returned is be glad? I do rejoice, and yet I am compelled to bewail my country's great calamity that doth the same assail. O Father great, whose majesty doth thundering scepters shake, the souring gods unto the Greeks now favorable make. With garlands green let every head rejoicing now be crowned. To thee the pipe and sacrifice melodious doth sound, and on thine altar lieth slain an heifer lily white. Before the same do present stand with hanging locks undight, a careful Trojan company in heavy woeful plight, on whom from high the laurel tree with spreading branch doth shine, whose virtue hath inspired them with Phoebus' grace divine.
And Clytemnestra presumably carries the exhausted soldier off, having obviously collapsed from a pure exhaustion of excessive poetry. And we go to Act 3, Scene 2, the chorus and Cassandra.
Alas, the cruel sting of love, how sweetly doth it taste! A misery is mortal man annexed while life doth last. The path of mischief for to fly now sith there is a gap. The wretched souls be frankly called from every woeful hap. By death, a pleasant port, for aye and rest themselves to shroud, where dreadful tumults never dwell, nor storms of fortune proud, nor yet the burning fiery flakes of Jove the same doth doubt, when wrongfully with thwacking thumps he raps his thunder out. Here, Lady Peace, the inhabitant victors doth never put to flight, nor yet the victor's threatening wrath, approaching nigh to fight. No whirling western wind doth urge the ramping seas to prance, no dusty cloud that raised is by savage demi-lance, on horseback riding rank by rank, no fierce and cruel host, no people slaughtered with their towns clean topsy-turvy tossed. While that the foe with flaming fire doth spoil and waste the wall, untamed and unbridled Mars destroys and batters all. The man alone who forceth not the fickle fates a straw, the visage grim of Acheron, whose eyes yet never saw, who never viewed with heavy cheer the ugsome limbo lake, and putting life in hazard, dare to death himself betake. That person is a prince's peer, and like the gods in might, who knoweth not what death doth mean, is in a piteous plight. The ruthful ruin of our native country we behold, that woeful night in which the roofs of houses overquelled, in Dardan's city blazing bright with flashy fiery flames, when as the Greeks with burning brands enkindled did the frames. That Troy, whom war and deeds of arms might not subdue and take, as once did mighty Hercules, whose quiver caused it quake, which neither he that Peleus' son and son to Thetis was, nor whom Achilles loved so well, could ever bring to pass, when glittering bright in field he wear false armor on his back, and counterfeiting fierce Achill the Trojans drove to wrack. Nor when Achilles, he himself, his mind from sorrow wrast, and Trojan women to the walls did scudding leap in haste. In misery she lost her proud estate and fast renown, by being stoutly overcome and hardly pulled down. Years 5 and 5 did Troy resist, and yet hereafter must, in one night's space by destiny, be laid in the dust. Their feigned gifts well have we tried, that huge and fateful gin we light of credit, with our own right hand have hailed in. That fatal gift of Greeks, what time at entry of the gap, the huge horse did shivering stand, wherein themselves did wrap. The captains close in hollow vaults with bloody war effrate, when lawfully we might have tried and searched their deceit. So by their own contrived snares the Greeks had been confound. The brazen bucklers being shook did give a clattering sound. A privy whispering oftentimes came tickling to our ear, and Pyrrhus, in a Murrian's name so ready for to hear, the crafty counsel picked out of false Ulysses' brain, did jangle in the hollow vaults that range thereof again. But fearing and suspecting naught, the heady youth of Troy laid hands upon the sacred ropes to hail and pull with joy. On this side, young Astiniax came guarded with his train. On the other part, Polyxena, disposed to be slain upon Achilles' tomb. She comes with maids, and he with men, a jolly flock with equal years, as young as they were then. Their vowed oblation to the gods in holy day attire the matrons bring, and so to church repaireth every sire. And all the city did alike. Yea, Hecuba, our queen, that since the woeful Hector's death, or now was never seen, she merry is. O grief accursed of all thy sorrows deep, for which that first or last befell, intendest thou to weep? Our battered walls, which heavenly hands erected have and framed, or else the burning temples which upon their idols flamed, lamenting these calamities, We have not time and space. O mighty parent Priam, we poor Trojans wail thy case. The old man's throttling throat I saw, alas, I saw he bored with cruel Pyrrhus' blade, that scant with any blood was gored.
Rain your tears, it down your cheeks should trickle evermore, with woeful wailings piteously your private friends deplore. My miseries refuse a mate, so much accursed as I, to rue my careful case, refrain your lamentable cry. As for mine own distress to mourn, I shall suffice alone.
To mingle tears with other tears, it doth us good to moan. In those the burning teary streams more ardently do boil, whom secret thoughts of lurking cares in privy breast turmoil. Though that thou were a gossip stout, that brook much sorrow may, I warrant thee thou mightest well lament this sore decay. Not sad and solemn Eden, that in the woods doth sing her sugared ditties finely tuned on sweet and pleasant string, recording Itty's woeful hap in divers kind of note. Whom Briony, though he were her child and of her womb begot, for to revenge his father's fault, she did not spare to kill, and gave his flesh and blood for food, the father's maw to fill. No Briony, who in swallow shape upon the ridges high of houses sits in Biston town, bewailing piteously with chattering throat of Tereus, her spouse, the cruel act, who did by strength and force of arms a shameful brutish fact, defiled the sister of his wife, fair Philomel by name, and eke cut out her tongue, lest she should blab it to his shame. Though Briony this her husband's rape, lamenting very sore, do wail and weep with piteous plaint, yet can she not deplore sufficiently, though that she would, our country's piteous plight. Though he himself among the swans, Sir Cygnus lily white, who dwells in streams of Isterflood and Tanis channel, could his weeping voice most earnestly, though utter out her would. Although the mourning Halcyons with doleful sighs do wail, at such time as the fighting floods their sakes did assail, or rashly waxing bold, attempt the seas now laid at rest, or being very fearful, feed their brood in tottering nest. Although as squeamish-hearted men, these priests in beldam rage, whom mother Cybele being born on high in lofty stage, doth move to play on shawms. Attis, the Phrygian, to lament, yet can they not this lot bewail, though brawn from arms they rent. Cassandra, in our tears there is no measure to refrain, those miseries all measure pass that plunged us in pain. The sacred fillets from thy heads, why dost thou hail and pull? They chiefly ought to worship God, whose hearts with grief be dull.
My fear by this affliction is clean abated all, nor praying to the heavenly ghosts for mercy will I call. Although they were disposed to chafe and fret in fustian fumes, they nothing have me to displease. Fortune her force consumes. Her spite is worn unto the stumps. What country have I left? Where is my sire? Am I of all my sisters quite bereft? The sacred tombs and altar stones our blood have drunk and swilled. Where are my brethren, blessed not? Destroyed in the field? All widow wives of Priam's sons may easily now behold the palace void and cast of court of silly Priam old. And by so many marriages, so many widows are, but only Helen, coming from the coast of Lacon far, that Hecuba, the mother of so many, a princely wight, whose fruitful womb did breed the brand of fire blazing bright, who also bare the swinge in Troy, by practice now doth learn new laws and guise of destiny in bondage to discern. On her she taketh heart of grace, with looks so stern and wild, and barketh as a bedlam bitch about her strangled child. Dear Polydore, the remnant left, and only hope of Troy, Hector and Priam to revenge, and to restore her joy.
The sacred Phoebus prophet is with sudden silence hushed. A quaking, trembling fear throughout her isms hath rushed. Her face as pale as ashes is, her fillets stand upright, the soft and gentle Goldilocks start up of her affright. Her panting, breathing breast stuffed up within doth grunt and groan, her glaring bright and steaming eyes are hither and thither thrown. Now glancing up and down they roll, now standing stiff they stare. She stretcheth up her head more straight than commonly she bear. Bold up she goes, her wrestling jaws that fast together cling, she doth attempt by divers means asunder now to wring. How mumbling words in gabbling mouth shut up she doth assuage, as Minos mad as Bacchus airs, doth serve in furious rage.
How doth it hap, O sacred tops of high Parnassus hill, that me, berapt of sense, with pricks of fury fresh ye fill? Why do you me with ghost inspire, that am beside my wits? O Phoebus, none of thine I am, release me from the cits. Infixed in my burning breast, the flames extinguish out. Who forceth me with fury fell to gad and trot about? Or for whose sake inspired with sprite mad mumbling must I? Why play I now the prophet cold, sith Troy in dust doth lie? The day doth shrink for dread of war, the night doth dim mine eyes, with mantle black of darkness deep, clean covered is the skies. But yo, two shining suns at once in heaven appeareth bright. Two Grecian houses muster do their armies twain to fight. Among the mighty goddesses in Ida woods I see the fatal shepherd in his throne as umpire placed to be. I do advise you to beware, beware, I say, of kings, a kindred in whose cankered hearts old privy grudges springs. That country clown Aegisthus he this stock shall overthrow. What doth this foolish desperate dame her naked weapons show? Whose crown intendeth she to crack in weed of lake and land, with hatchet by the Amazons invented first in hand? What face of mighty majesty bewitched hath mine eyes? The conqueror of savage beasts, Marmaric lion lies, whose noble neck is worried with currish fang and tooth. The churlish snaps of eager lioness abide he doth. Alack, ye ghosts of all my friends, why should ye say that I, among the rest, am only safe from perils far to lie? Fain farther follow thee I would, Troy being laid in dust. O brother, terror of the Greeks, O Trojans' aid and trust! Our ancient pomp I do not see, nor yet thy warmed hands, that fierce on Greekish flaming fleet did fling the fiery brands. But mangled members, scorched corpse, and eke thy valiant arms, hard pinioned and bound in bands, sustaining grievous harms. O Troilus, a match unfit, encountering with Achael, that mighty man of arms, to soon come unto thee I will. I do delight to sail with them on stinking Stygian flood, to view the churlish mastiff cur of hell, it doth me good. And gaping-mouthed kingdom dark of greedy Daetus' reign, the barge of filthy Phlegian this day shall entertain, me conquering, and conquered, and princes' souls withal. You flittering shades, I you beseech, and eke on thee I call. O Stygian pool, whereon the gods their solemn oaths do take, unbolt awhile the brazen bars of darksome limbo lake, whereby the Phrygian folk in hell may Mysian state behold. Look up, ye silly wretched souls, the fates are backward rolled. The squally sisters do approach, and deal their bloody strokes, their smouldering faggots in their hands, half brunt to ashes smokes. Their visages so pale do burn, with fiery flaming eyes, a garment black their gnawed guts doth gird in mourning guise. Dire dread of night begins to howl, the bones of body vast, with lying long do rot corrupt, in miry puddle cast. Behold, the weary aged man his burning thirst forgot, the waters dallying at his lips to catch endeavours not, but mourneth for the funeral that shall ensue anon. The Trojan prince his royal robes triumphant putteth on.
The furious rage, clean overpast, begins itself to slake, and slips away even as a bull that deadly wound doth take, on gashed neck, affront the ears. Come, let us ease at last her limbs, that of the sprite of God hath felt the mighty blast. Returning home again at length, and crowned with laurel bough, a sign of worthy victory, is Agamemnon now. The wife to meet her husband doth her speedy passage ply, returning hand in hand, and foot by foot, most lovingly.
And indeed, as we go into Act 4, Agamemnon enters to Cassandra, followed by a lot of Greek soldiers.
At length I do arrive again upon my native soil. God save thee, O dear loved land, to thee so huge a spoil, so many barbarous people yield, the flower of Asia, Troy. To bear thy yoke submits herself, that long did live in joy. Why doth this prophet on the ground her sprawling body laid, thus reel and stagger on her neck, all trembling and dismayed? Sirs, take her up, with liquor warm let her be cherished. Now peeps she again with drooping eyes sunk in her head. Pick up thy sprite. Here is the port wished for in thy misery. This day is festival.
At Troy, so was it wont to be.
Let us to the altars worship give.
The altars died my sire.
Pray we to Jove.
To Jove, whose grace divine doth me inspire.
Dost thou suppose that Troy thou seest?
And Priam eke I see.
Troy is not here.
Where Helen is there, take I Troy to be.
Fear not, as made to serve thy dame.
Nay, freedom draweth nigh.
Take thou no thought how thou shalt live.
All cares for to defy. Death gives a courage unto me.
Yet say I once again, there is no danger left, whereby thou mightst hurt sustain.
But yet much troublous danger doth hang over thy head, I wot.
What mischief may a victor dread?
Even that he dreadeth not.
Yea, trust ye many of my men come carry her away. 'Tis but the sprite she rid herself, lest fury force her say that may be prejudicial. Her tongue she cannot frame. To thee, O father, flinging forth the lightning flashing flame, that dost disperse the clouds and rule the course of every star, and guide the globe of earth, to whom these booties won by war with triumph victors dedicate. To thee, O Juno hight, the sister dear of doughty Jove, thy husband full of might. Both I and Greece, with flesh and blood, and ache our vowed beast, and gorgeous gifts of Araby, give worship to thy hest.
O Greece, by noble gentlemen in honour shining clear, O Greece, to wrathful Juno thou that art the darling dear, some jolly worthy lusty blood thou fosters evermore, thou hast made even the gods that were a number odd before, that puissant mighty Hercules, a noble imp of thine, deferred by his travails 12, wrapped up in heaven to shine, for whom the heavens did alter course, and Jupiter withal did iterate the hours of night when dampish dew doth fall, and charge Phoebus' chariot swift to trot with slower pace, and leisurely bright Lady Moon thy homeward wane to trace. Bright Lucifer, that year by year his name anew doth change, came back again, to whom the name of Hesper seemed strange. Aurora to her common course her reared head addressed, and crouching backward down again the same she did arrest, upon the shoulder of her spouse, whose years with age are worn the east did feel, so felt the west, that Hercules was born. Dame Nature could not clean dispatch to utter in one night that boisterous lad. The whirling world did wait for such a wight. O babe, whose shoulders underprop the ample spacious sky, in clasped arms thy prowess did the crushed lion try, who from his fiery yawning throat spews out his broiling brand, the nimble hind in maenal mount hath known thy heavy hand. The boar hath felt thy fist, which did Arcadia destroy. The monstrous conquered bull hath roared, that Creta did annoy. The dragon dire, that breeding beast, in Lerna pool he slew, and chopping off one head forbade thereof to rise anew. With clubbed, bruising, battering bat, he crankly did subdue. The brethren twins, yet tued on teat, whereof 3 monsters grew, of triple-formed Geryon the spoil into the east, and drove of cattle Hercules did fetch out of the west. Away from tyrant Diomed, the Thracian horse he led, which neither with the grass that grew by Strymon flood he fed, nor yet on Heber banks, but them the villain did refresh his greedy, munching, cramming jades with aliens' blood and flesh. Their raw-fed jaws imbrued were with the Carmen's blood at last. The spoils and shafts Hippolyte saw from her bosom rast. As soon as he with clattering shaft the dusky cloud did smite, the stimful bird that shadowed the sun did take her flight. The fertile trees that apples bear of gold did him fierce sore, which never yet acquaintance had with taster's tooth before. But whipping up with lively twigs into the air she flies, and while the chinking plate doth found, then Argos full of eyes, the watchman shrinking close for cold, that sleep yet never knew, doth hear the noise while Hercules, with metal of yellow hue, well loaden packs away, and left the grove befilched clean. The hound of hell did hold his tongue, drawn by and triple chain, nor bark with any bowing throat, nor could abide the hue or colour of the heavenly light, whose beams he never knew. When thou wert captain general and didst conduct our host, they that of Dardan's line to come their stock do falsely boast, were vanquished by force of arms, and since they felt again thy grey goose wing, whose bitterness to fear might them constrain.
And we go into the final act after that very short Act 4. Act 5, Cassandra gets to do some cheerful prophesy stuff, probably. That's what Cassandra does. Sure, everyone will believe her.
Within a revel Rex is kept as sore as ever was, even at the 10 years' siege of Troy. What thing is this? Alas! Get up my soul, and of the rage avengement worthy crave. Though Phrygians will we be vanquished, the victory we have. The matter well is brought about. Up Troy thou risest now, thou flat on floor hast pulled down Greece to lie as low as thou. Thy conqueror doth turn his face. My prophesying sprite did never yet disclose to me so notable a sight. I see the same, and am thereat, and busied in the broil. No vision fond fantastical my senses doth beguile. Such fare as Phrygian feasts on last unhappy night, at Agamemnon's royal court full daintily they dight. With purple hangings all adorned, the broidered beds do shine. In old Assarac's goblets gilt, they swink and swill the wine. The king in gorgeous royal robes on chair of state doth sit, and pranked with pride of Priam's pomp, of whom he conquered it. Put off this hostile weed to him, the queen his wife gan say, and of thy loving lady wrought wear rather this array. This garment knit, it makes me loath, that shivering here I stand. Oh, shall a king be murthered by a banished wretch's hand? Out, shall the adulterer destroy the husband of the wife? The dreadful destinies approached, the food that last in life he tasted of before his death, their master's blood shall see. The gobs of blood down dropping on the wind shall poured be. By traitorous trick of trapping weed his death is brought about, which being put upon his head his hands could not get out. The stopped poke with mouth set ope his muffled head doth hide. The mankind dame with trembling hand the sword drew from her side, nor to the utmost of her might it in his flesh she thrust, but in the giving of the stroke she stayed all aghast. He, as it were, a bristled boar entangled in the net, among the briars in bushy woods, yet trieth out to get. With struggling much the shrinking bands more straitly he doth bind. He strives in vain, and would slip off the snare that doth him blind, which catcheth hold on every side, but yet th' entangled wretch doth grope about his subtle foes with gripping hand to catch. But furious Tyndaris prepared the poleaxe in her hand, and as the priest to sacrifice at the altar side doth stand, and views with eye the bullock's net, ere that with axe he smite, so to and fro she heaves her hand to strike and level right. He hath the stroke, dispatched it is, not quite chop off the head, it hangeth by a little crop here from the carcass dead. The spouting blood came gushing out, and there the head doth lie, with wallowing, bobbling, mumbling tongue, nor they do by and by forsake him so, the breathless corpse. Aegisthus doth all to coil, and mangled hath the gashed corpse, while thus he doth him spoil. She putteth to her helping hand by detestable deed, they both accord unto the kind, whereof they do proceed. Dame Helen's sister right she is, and he Thyestes' son. Lo, doubtful Titan standeth still, the day now being done, not knowing whether best to keep still on his wonted way, or turn his wheels unto the path of dire Thyestes' day.
Act 5, Scene 2, Electra and Orestes.
O thou whom of our father's death the only help we have, fly, fly from force of furious foes, make haste thyself to save. Our house is topsy-turvy tossed, our stock is cast away. Our rueful realms to ruin run, our kingdoms do decay. Who cometh here in chariot swift, thus galloping amain? Brother, disguised in thy weed, let me thy person feign. O buzzard blind, what dost thou mean from foreign folk to fly? Whom dost thou shun? It doth behoove to fear this family. Orestes, now be bold, and set all shivering fear aside. The certain succour of a trusty friend I have espied.
Act 5, Scene 3, enter Strophilus.
With solemn pomp, I, Strophilus, forsaking Phaeacia's land, bearing a branch of palm that grows at Elis in my hand. Returned back I am, the cause that willed me hither wend, is with these gift to gratify and welcome home my friend, whose valiant army scaled and shook the tattered Trojan walls, who wearied with the 10 years' war, now flat on floor she falls. What woeful wight is this that stains her morning face with tears, and drowned deep in drowsy dumps oppressed is with fears? I know full well this damsel is of prince's lineage born. What cause Electra hath this joyful family to mourn?
By treason that my mother wrought, my father lieth slain, and drinking of their father's cup the children do complain. Aegisthus engrosseth castles got by fornication.
Alack, that of so long a time felicity is none.
I thee request even for the love my father thou doest owe, and for the honour of the crown, whose bruit abroad both grow in every coast, and by the gods that diversely do deal, take into thy tuition, convey away, and steal this poor Orest. Such kind of theft is piety indeed.
Although that Agamemnon's death doth teach me to take heed, yet will I undertake the same, and with all diligence. Orestes shall I go about with strength to have thee hence. Prosperity requireth faith, but trouble exacts the same. Have here a price for those that do contend and wage in game. An ornament with comely grace, ordained to deck the bough, and let thy head be covered with this green and pleasant bough. And carry this victorious triumphant branch in hand. God grant this palm that planted was in fertile Pisa's land, where solemn games will celebrate Jove's honour to express. May both the safeguard be to thee, and bring thee good success. Thou that bestrides thy father's steeds, as he before hath done, go strike a league of amity with Pylades, my son. Now nimble nags, let Greece hereof recording testify, with headlong scouring course, amain this traitorous country fly.
And exit Strophilus and Orestes.
He is escaped and gone, and with unmeasurable might, the chariot horse with rein at will do scud out of my sight. Now free from peril on my foes attendance will I make, and offer willingly my head the deadly wound to take. The cruel conqueress of her spouse is come, whose spotted weed with sprinkles, sign of slaughter, do bear record of her deed. Her gory hands new bathed in blood, as yet they be not dry. Her rough and churlish rigorous looks the facts do notify. Unto the temple will I trudge, Cassandra suffer me, oppressed with regal grief, take part of sacrifice with thee.
But Act 5, Scene 4, we have the entrance of Cytemnestra to Electra, and there's Aegisthus and Cassandra, and there are soldiers.
O thou, thy mother's enemy, ungracious, saucy face, after what sort dost thou, a maid, appear in public space?
I have with my virginity the bowers of bawds forsook.
What man is he that ever thee to be a virgin took?
What, your own daughter?
With thy mother more modest should thou be.
Do you at length begin to preach such godliness to me?
A manly stomach stout thou bast with swelling haughty heart. Subdued with sorrow learn thou shalt to play a woman's part.
A sword and buckler very well a woman doth beseem, except I dote.
Thyself dost thou, hail fellow, with us esteem.
What Agamemnon new is this, whom thou hast got of late?
Hereafter shall I tame, and teach thy girlish tongue to prate, and make thee know how to a queen thy taunting to forbear.
The whilst thou widow, answer me directly to this gear. Thy husband is bereaved quite of breath, his life is done.
Enquire where thy brother is, so seek about my son.
He is departed out of Greece.
Go fetch him out of hand.
Fetch thou my father unto me.
Give me to understand, where doth he lurking hide his head? Where is he shrunk away?
All plunge of perils past he is, and at a quiet stay, and in another kingdom where no harm he doth mistrust. This answer were sufficient to please a parent just, but one whose breast doth boil in wrath it cannot satisfy.
Today by death thou shalt receive thy fatal destiny.
On this condition I my please, the altars to forsake, if that this hand shall do the deed, my death when I shall take. Or else if in my throat to bathe thy blade thou do delight, most willingly I yield my throat and give thee leave to smite. Or if thou wilt chop off my head in brutish beastly guise, my neck awaiting for the wound outstretched ready lies. Thou hast committed sinfully a great and grievous guilt. Go purge thy hardened hands, the which thy husband's blood have spilt.
O thou that of my perils all dost suffer part with me, and in my realm dost also rule with eagle dignity. Aegisthus, art thou glad at this, as doth her not behoove? With checks and taunts the daughter doth her mother's malice move. She keeps her brother's counsel close conveyed out of the way.
Thou malapert witless wench, thine elvish prating stay. Refrain these words unfit thy mother's glowing cares to vex.
What shall the breeder of this broil control me with his checks, whose father's guilt hath caused him to have a doubtful name, who both is to his sister son and nephew to the same?
To snap her head off with thy sword, Aegisthus, dost thou refrain? Let her give up the ghost, or bring her brother straight again. Let her be locked in dungeon dark, and let her spend her days in caves and rocks, with painful pangs, torment her every ways. I hope him whom she hidden hath she will again descry, through being clapped in prison strong and suffering poverty with irksome and unsavory smells on every side annoyed, and forced to wear a widow's weed ere wedding day enjoyed, put in exile and banishment when each man doth her hate. So shall she be by misery compelled to yield too late, prohibited of wholesome air fruition to have.
Grant me my doom by means of death to pass unto my grave.
I would have granted it to thee, if thou should it deny. Unskillful is the tyrant, who by suffering wretches die, doth end their pains.
What after death doth anything remain?
And if thou do desire to die, the same see you refrain. Lay hand, sirs, on this wondrous wretch, whom being carried on, even to the furthest corner of my justification, of my jurisdiction, far out beyond my Sene's land and bonds, let her be bound. With darkness dim and hideous hold, let her be closed round. This captive spouse and wicked queen, the troll of prince's bed shall pay her pains, and suffer death by losing of her head. Come, hale her on, that she may follow. That way my spouse is gone, whose love from me enticed was.
Do not thus hail me on. I will before you take the way these tidings first to tell. Unto my country, men of Troy, beneath in lowest hell, how Overwhelmed ships each where are spread the seas upon, and Mycenae country conquered is brought in subjection. He that of 1,000 captains was grand captain general, come to as great calamity as Troy itself did fall. Entrapped was by the traitorous train and whoredom of his wife, and by a gift received of her, deprived of his life. Let us not linger, on with me, and thanks I do you give. I joy that it might be my hap thus after Troy to live.
Go to. Prepare thyself to die, thou frantic, raging wight.
The frenzy fits of fury fell on you shall also light.
And they exit Act 5, Scene 5, because we didn't have enough from Eurybates earlier, added to the tragedy by the translator to close the play.
Alas, ye hateful hellish hags, ye furies foul and fell, why cause ye rusty rancors rage in noble hearts to dwell, and cankered hate in boiling breasts to grow from age to age? Could not the grandsire's painful pangs the children's wrath assuage? Nor famine faint a pining paunch with burning thirst of hell, amid the blackest stream of Styx, where poisoning breathes do dwell, where vapours vile breaking out from dampish miry mud increase the pains of Tantalus, deserved by guiltless blood. Could not thine own offence suffice, Thyestes, in thy life, to file thy brother's spousal bed and to abuse his wife? But after breath from body fled, and life thy limbs have left, cannot remembrance of revenge out of thy breast be reft? What, yet hast thou not laid thy lips to taste of Lethe's flood? Now after death why dost thou come to move thy son to blood? Cruel Disses grant to thee thy passport back again, to work this woe upon the world, and make such rigour reign, that Clytemnestra is become the 50 sister dire of Danae's daughters, that once their husbands' death conspire. Oh, hear how fickle fortune gives but brittle fading joy. Lo, he, who late a conqueror triumphed over Troy, enduring many sturdy storms with mighty toil and pain, to sow the seed of fame, hath reaped small fruit thereof again. When as his honour budding forth with flower began to bloom, alas, the stock was hewed down and sent to deadly doom, and they that of his victory and coming home were glad, to sunny morning changed their mirth, with heaviness bestad. The lusty pomp of royal court is dead, O doleful day! The people moan their prince's death with woe and wheel away, with howling, crying, wringing hands, with sobs, with sighs and tears, and with their fists they beat their breasts, they pull and hale their hairs. And as the sheep amazed run and ramp about the field, when as their shepherd to the wolf his gory throat doth yield, e'en so, as mad they rage and rave throughout Mycenae's land, deprived of their prince, they fear the bloody tyrant's hand. While thus were woeful wailings heard in every place about, the good Cassandra, come from Troy, to death is haled out. Like as the swan, who, when the time of death approaches nigh, by nature warned is thereof, and pleased well to die, doth celebrate her funeral with dirge and solemn song. E'en so the noble virgin, who in woe hath lived long, most joyful goes she to her death, with mild and pleasant face, stout boistering out her burly breast, with princely port and grace. Nothing dismayed, with courage bold and cheerful countenance, on stage ordained for her death, she gan herself advance, as though she had not come to taste the stroke of fatal knife, but even as is it in bridal bed her journey were to meet. Courageous dear, not having mind of death nor winding sheet, when looking round on every side she took her leave of all, the vapoured eyes of young and old the trickling tears do fall, The Greeks themselves to grief are moved to see this heavy sight. So pity pierced the headsman's heart that thrice about to smite. He stayed the smart with shivering hand, yet once again he tried, and from her shoulders struck her head, and thus the virgin died. But now the Greeks another cause of mourning have in hand. Orestes, Agamemnon's son, is forced to fly the land. Among old rotten, ragged rocks there lies an ugly place, a dungeon deep, as dark as hell, unknown to Phoebus' face. Hollow, huge, wide gaping hole, with ways still bending down, whose mouth with venomous withered weeds is hid and overgrown, where stinking smells come belching out from filthy, dirty dike, where vermin vile do creep and crawl, in hell is not the like. Ill-favoured, foul, misshapen bugs do lurk about this cave, with dreadful sounds and roaring noise within the pit they rave. Even hither is Electra sent, in darkness deep to lie, in poverty and comfortless without the light of sky, fast clogged with iron bolts and chains, thus by her mother laid, in torments, till by her to death Orestes be betrayed, who, as Cassandra telleth, shall revenge his father's death, deprived with sword did adulterer and mother both of breath. So after all these bloody broil, Greece ne'er shall be free, but blood for blood, death by turns, the after age shall see.
And they all live happily ever after. It's a really interesting edition, actually. It's sort of expanding on Clytemnestra's sort of final promise to her daughter of just, well, we're going to drag you to a really horrible place. Which indeed, foul misshapen bugs do lurk about the cave. So, cheerfulness indeed there. A lot of offstage action, as is Seneca's wont. So Agamemnon pops in to be murdered offstage. I mean, he wasn't on for long, was he?
Man, everything's fine. Oh, put the little girl in. I give her a drink, she's fine.
Yes, Cassandra's just had this massive sort of vision quest moment, collapsed on the ground. Everyone's sort of going, oh, God. And Agamemnon just comes in. Oh, just give her a brandy. Everything will be fine.
Yeah, it's hard not to see him as kind of comic.
Yeah, I mean, you know, he's just a figure to be killed and killed off stage. You know, that's what they do. Yes, there's a lot in there. I mean, there's a lot in this. I mean, there's a lot. Yeah. I mean, that soldier's speech in the middle, just which mostly says nothing. He just said we had a really rough sea voyage. Basically, all he says. It was really rough.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lynn.
Yeah, and took a lot of words to say that it was a rough crossing. But I do think it serves a kind of a purpose to sort of foreshadow, create that ominous mood. It's like, yeah, we conquered Troy, but
we're bringing bad things back with us.
Bringing bad things back with us. Yeah.
Rachael.
I mean, like the imagery of the ocean and then that imagery of the cave at the end, there's so much wonderful scenery that gets painted there between even though I also had a hard time understanding, like from the length of the messenger's speech, what exactly he was describing to Clytemnestra. I think it paints, it's like haiku or something like that they're meant to be nature poems, or, you know, and he's giving us these sort of like hellscapes, this cave hellscape and this ocean hellscape. And I wonder, because this is a translation of you know, something like, if maybe it meant something to people back then who might have been more, you know, on the ocean or on the rivers more often, and might have meant something to them, and you know, that we might not get as the imagery because we're not people who are working on the seas.
Yeah, that sense of the sea as being terribly dangerous, which it still is, but we have a slightly cozier view of it as modern people. Eric was waving. By the way, we're not going to do final thoughts. I'm just going to go around until everyone wants to, because we've overrun as we do with Seneca. So throw your thoughts at me, and then disappear if you so wish, before I officially close the session. So Eric, you waved.
Well, yeah, it bounces along quite. I was going to say quite nicely, but then that's because of the rhyme and the meter and all those things. But yeah, that whole speech about like the sort of. They had a storm, and then they had to face what do you call it? Basically, death by treason, which was sort of the whole Palamedes' father's idea of trying to kill them, which isn't really explicitly explained here. But yeah, I don't know if there's a point in me sort of elaborating on that. Basically, this guy just sets up traps near. By sort of pretending that the waters are safe, and just sort of goes, look, it's safe, and sort of leads a bunch of the ships to crash on rocks because they decided to kill his son in Troy, which we got in the Iron Age Part 1, I think, or Part 2. Part 2, which wasn't really explicitly described.
Lynn.
I did love the confrontation between Electra and Clytemnestra. I just kind of wanted to mention that. It was the most genuinely dramatic section for me. Like, where's your brother? I'm not telling you. Where's your brother? You killed my dad. I'm not telling you where my brother is. It was pretty great.
Yeah, go to your room. It's a cave with bugs in. Yeah. Clytemnestra just gets really nasty there. Briony.
Yeah, just the way that the words, the meter, the alliteration, all of it it almost carries the reader through. Like, I did fumble a few times, but I think at least the first about 8 times that I thought I was going to fumble, you just keep going and you don't, and it sort of somehow carries you through it. It's really weird.
I mean, it's a really dense text, and I think it's one of those things that rewards going over it many times, and that's the sort of the thing of literature over drama to a degree. But yeah, it's got a lot of stuff that I liked. It's just there's a lot of stuff. Alan.
Yeah, talking of a lot of stuff, I just went back and checked that long Eurybates speech, the description of the sea cross, which could have been reduced to about 3 lines of it was horrible.
Bit wet.
It's something like 2,000 words.
Yeah.
And that I'd not actually looked at it ahead of time and was going, is there somewhere here I can breathe?
No.
There was also the interesting bit I found in the bit before that, when he got the brief dialogue going on, of the rhyme being broken between characters, which wasn't how it had worked in the previous bits, where there was a line from one of the two and then the other picked up the rhyme in their line.
Yeah.
It was certainly interesting.
Yeah, I mean, 2,000 words, that's the better part of 20 minutes. I mean, you can get 15, 20 minutes sort of.
It felt it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing is, in performance, I was putting in the chat, we need sound effects and stuff, and sort of dumb show in action stuff. I mean, it's almost a little thing in its own right. It's almost you could just do this as a sort of poem about a bad sea crossing, and just leave it there because it's some. It was some. It had a lot of good stuff in there. It was any other thoughts before I close the session? Helen, then Eric.
I don't know whether it's escaped from chat, but in chat we've had an awful lot of talk about the Ancient Mariner. I don't know whether we've actually mentioned it.
Not out loud, no.
No.
Well, there's an enormous amount of Ancient Mariner. It just kept on coming. The other thing that I really liked was that in chat someone said, we've been through the entire Greek mythology except the labours of Hercules. And next thing you know, the chorus is going through the labours of Hercules.
Don't worry, we do have some Hercules action coming up. We've done some Hercules. He did pass through.
No, I meant in this play.
Oh, right, I see, yeah.
The choruses and messengers and recounters and whatever had been through practically the whole of Greek mythology, except for the labours of Hercules. And then all of a sudden, as soon as that was said, the chorus got to recount the labours of Hercules. Fortunately, and not at too great a length.
Eric?
Yeah, I was just thinking, like why on earth would the translator just go, yes, I'll just add another however many lines to this because it wasn't long enough already.
Well, it's a
I mean,
book.
I can understand
Remember, literature is,
Yeah.
It's allowed.
And giving it to the same character who'd already had that 20 minutes worth.
Well, again, perfectly reasonable. That's what he does. He does long descriptions of things, and I think it rounds it off quite nicely. I quite like it.
It's quite a good epilogue.
Yeah.
I felt it would more properly have been given to chorus.
Depending which chorus, of course, we didn't differentiate that there is a distinction of choruses.
Did you notice that there are two choruses?
Yes.
Because I suddenly said, hang on, this is a different person.
Yes, you've got effectively the Trojan women, and then you've got the Greek chorus of gentlemen, I think.
That came up out of what I believe is known as left field.
Yeah, no, that was my fault. I should have split the chorus into two, so that you got that distinction for the listener at home. Oh well, never mind. Rachael.
I was just gonna say, the addition at the end, I think we had this with the translation that we did last week too, where there was some sort of addition, and I think there is. For if this was a younger writer putting it together, or he put it together earlier in his career, it could be an attempt to, showcase his own, versification and perhaps get some patrons to, put up his own original works, because you have a more built-in audience, I think, if you're writing something that people might already know or be interested in from just from the name of a classical author.
He was born in 1545, so he's in his 20s, early 20s. Dies young. Yeah, mid 40s. Oh well.
Someone had filled him up with a classical education.
Yeah.
It never turns out well.
Nonsense.
Yeah. Right. Anything else before I close the session? Because I do need to do that relatively swiftly. So that's the sound of my textbooks falling on the floor. EK Chambers just went flying. So all that remains to thank all the wonderful readers for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye. Bye. Boat, ship, boat, sea stuff.